Have you ever looked at a man and thought, if he would just open up, this could actually be something amazing? Maybe you feel that spark, that potential, that almost connection, but every time things start to deepen, he pulls back just enough to keep you guessing. It's like he's close enough to touch, but emotionally miles away. And you're left wondering if you're imagining the chemistry, or if he's just afraid to admit it. In this video, we're going to close that gap, the invisible emotional distance that keeps a man from seeing you as the woman he could truly build with. Because here's the truth. Emotionally unavailable men aren't incapable of connection. They're cautious. They're assessing. They're trying to understand whether you feel safe, whether you're different, and whether being vulnerable with you will cost them or heal them. And that is where your power comes in. Today, I'm going to show you the micro shifts in energy, tone, presence, and mindset that quietly tell his nervous system, you're safe here, you can show up, you can feel something real. This isn't about chasing him, convincing him, or proving your worth. It's about understanding how men experience emotional risk, and how the right feminine cues make a man suddenly notice you in a way he didn't before. By the end of this video, he won't just see you differently, he'll feel you differently, and that's what makes him finally lean in. Most women assume men become emotionally unavailable because they don't care or aren't serious. But the reality is far more complicated, and often far more human. Emotional unavailability in men isn't usually about a lack of interest, it's about a lack of safety. Many men grow up learning that showing emotion equals weakness, that vulnerability is a liability, and that opening up will eventually lead to disappointment or rejection. So instead of leaning in, they protect themselves by staying one step back, keeping their feelings guarded and their hearts half closed. When a man senses the potential for something real, something meaningful, it can actually trigger old fears instead of excitement. His mind goes straight to, what if I can't be enough? What if this gets messy? What if I fail her? What if I lose myself? These fears don't always show up as conscious thoughts. They often surface as distance, mixed signals, or a sudden shift in how available he is. Some men have been in relationships where their emotional openness was used against them. Others have carried the pressure to always be the strong, steady one, so expressing deeper feelings feels unnatural or even dangerous. And many men simply don't have the emotional vocabulary to describe what they're feeling. Pulling away becomes the default response because it's easier than trying to explain confusion. They don't fully understand themselves. But here's the part most women never realize. Emotional unavailability has very little to do with you. It's a protective mechanism he created long before you arrived. The more he feels something for you, the more those internal alarms start going off. The stronger the pull, the stronger his instinct can be to retreat. Understanding this changes the entire dynamic. Instead of taking his distance personally or trying to fix him, you begin to see the deeper pattern, a man who wants connection but doesn't yet know how to move through the fear that comes with it. And once you understand what drives that fear, you gain the ability to create an emotional space he can finally step into. When a man builds emotional walls, he's not doing it to punish you, confuse you, or make things harder. He's doing it to survive something he doesn't know how to process. His walls aren't about you. They're about the patterns he learned long before you showed up. At the core of his resistance is a psychological instinct. Protect first, feel later. Men are conditioned to see vulnerability as a potential threat, not an invitation. So when something begins to matter, when a woman starts to touch places in him he's kept locked away, the instinctive response is to pull back and reinforce the walls. These walls often come from unhealed experiences, being dismissed, being shamed for emotional expression, being betrayed, or being expected to man up before he even understood what that meant. Each of those moments becomes another brick, another layer of emotional armor. What's interesting is that many men don't even realize how heavily fortified they are. They think they're being reasonable, careful, or not ready, when really they're trying to avoid the intense discomfort of feeling exposed. A man's walls also form from the fear of losing control. Emotional connection means he could fall, he could fail, he could be seen too clearly. And trust is terrifying when you've spent years believing your emotions must stay hidden. When he starts liking you, admiring you, or imagining something deeper, it threatens the stability of that emotional fortress. His logic tells him to stay safe, but his heart is curious, creating an inner conflict that often shows up as inconsistency. Another layer is his struggle with emotional language. If he never learned how to identify or express feelings, your desire for connection can feel like pressure, even when you're not asking for much. Opening up becomes a task he feels unequipped for. So he keeps the walls up, hoping you'll stay close enough to feel good but far enough not to hurt him. Understanding these psychological layers doesn't excuse his behavior, but it gives you a clearer lens. His walls aren't rejection, they're a roadmap showing exactly where he needs safety, patience, and a different kind of energy to let someone in. There's a specific shift in feminine energy that a man feels before you ever say a word. A shift that either pulls him closer or makes him retreat behind his emotional walls. This energy isn't about being softer, quieter, or overly accommodating. It's about stepping into a grounded, confident presence that communicates without force. I am secure in who I am. When a woman embodies this energy, it disrupts his usual defenses because he feels something rare, emotional safety that doesn't demand anything from him. Men are incredibly sensitive to a woman's internal state, even if they don't articulate it. When you're anxious, overthinking, or trying to interpret every one of his moves, he feels that pressure energetically. But when your energy shifts into calm assurance, when you stop chasing clarity and instead radiate emotional steadiness, he experiences a subtle but powerful pull. He feels accepted rather than evaluated, drawn in rather than cornered. This shift happens when you no longer treat his distance as a personal threat but as information. Instead of reacting, trying to fix things, or proving your worth, you allow space. You let him come toward you, rather than filling every gap with effort. That space is magnetic. It gives him room to feel, room to consider, room to approach on his own terms. And that is when he starts leaning in, not because he's pressured, but because he's curious. Another part of this energy shift is when you express your needs with clarity instead of tension. The way you communicate changes. You speak with softness, not fear, with honesty, not control. You don't hide your emotions, but you also don't use them as a bargaining chip. A man can feel the difference instantly. It makes him relax. It makes him listen. It makes him feel capable, not criticized. Your demeanor becomes more playful, more open, more receptive, not in a performative way, but because you're no longer trying to manage his reactions. You're letting the connection breathe. This unspoken confidence disrupts his emotional autopilot. Suddenly he sees you differently. He feels your presence instead of your worry. And in that moment, without you asking for anything, he feels a desire to step forward, show more of himself, and match the emotional tone you're setting. There are certain words, phrases, and ways of speaking that naturally make a man feel safe enough to open up. Not because you're coaxing him, but because you're creating a space where he's not afraid of being misunderstood or judged. Most men don't open up when they feel pressured. They open up when they feel invited. And that invitation happens through subtle, intentional language that communicates curiosity, not criticism. One of the most powerful things you can say is something as simple as, "I'm not here to fix you. I just want to understand you." This immediately lowers his defenses because it tells him you aren't trying to change him or push him into emotional territory he's not ready for. Understanding feels gentle. Fixing feels threatening. When he hears that, he relaxes. Another phrase that unlocks emotional doors is, "I appreciate when you share things with me." Men often don't get positive reinforcement for emotional honesty. They're used to being told to toughen up or communicate differently. When you reward even the smallest amount of openness with genuine appreciation, it reinforces the idea that opening up with you is safe and meaningful. There's also immense power in saying, "You don't have to have the perfect words. Just tell me what you're feeling right now." This takes the pressure off. Men often hesitate to share because they don't know how to articulate their emotions perfectly, and they fear saying the wrong thing. Letting him know he doesn't need perfection takes away that invisible barrier. Phrases like, "Take your time," or "I'm here when you're ready," also tell his nervous system that there's no countdown, no expectation, no emotional stopwatch ticking. You're not rushing him, you're giving him space to meet you at his own pace. And then there's the subtle but transformative statement, "Your feelings matter to me." Many men never hear this. They've been conditioned to be the protector, the provider, the one who stays strong. Hearing that his emotions matter, that they have value, weight, and impact, can be the first moment he realizes that opening up doesn't make him weak, it makes him seen. When you use this type of language consistently, his walls don't crumble all at once, but they soften, they shift. They begin to open, and soon he starts sharing more, not because he has to, but because he wants to. One of the biggest reasons emotionally guarded men pull back isn't because they don't care, but because they feel overwhelmed by pressure they don't know how to articulate. What many women don't realize is that small behaviors, often done with the best intentions, can trigger a man's instinct to retreat. When a man already struggles with vulnerability, even subtle signals of urgency, expectation, or emotional intensity can feel like too much, too fast. For example, asking for constant reassurance or clarity when he's still trying to understand his own feelings can make him shut down, not because he doesn't want to give you answers, but because he feels cornered. When a man senses that every step he takes is being measured or evaluated, he starts protecting himself by pulling back. It's not the question that pushes him away, it's the pressure behind it. Another thing that pushes him further away is reacting emotionally to his moments of distance. If his withdrawal immediately triggers panic, frustration, or confrontation, he interprets it as proof that emotional intimacy comes with conflict. What he hears beneath the reaction is, if I open up, the stakes get higher. If I pull back, she gets upset. And in his mind, both options feel unsafe. Even over-explaining your feelings or trying to fix the vibe too quickly can unintentionally overwhelm him. He needs breathing room. When every shift in the connection is dissected or addressed immediately, he doesn't get the space he needs to process or re-engage at his own pace. Another subtle push-away is when you start adjusting your entire emotional state based on his behavior, becoming more intense when he's distant or excessively warm when he shows interest. He can feel when your sense of security depends on him, and that responsibility can feel heavy, especially for a man who already struggles with emotional openness. And one of the most damaging patterns is trying to persuade him into deeper connection through logic, comparison, or guilt. Statements like, "Why is this so hard for you?" or "Other guys wouldn't act like this," don't motivate him. They confirm his fear that intimacy comes with judgment. What really pushes him away is the feeling that he can't be himself without disappointing you. When a man senses that, he chooses distance every time, but when he feels accepted, even in his imperfect moments, that's when he begins to move toward you instead of away. What makes a man look at a woman and think, "She's not like anyone I've met before"? It's rarely about appearance, achievements, or anything flashy. What makes you stand out in his mind is the emotional experience he has when he's around you, the way he feels in your presence, the way the connection flows without forcing, and the way you handle his vulnerability with grace instead of pressure. When a man sees you as different, it's because you bring something into his life that feels rare: emotional ease. The first thing that sets you apart is your ability to stay grounded instead of reactive. When he pulls back or becomes uncertain, you don't spiral into panic or chase him for answers. Instead, you remain steady. This emotional steadiness is incredibly attractive to a man who's used to women responding to his distance with anxiety, frustration, or over-explaining. Your calmness signals confidence. It tells him you value yourself enough not to be shaken by temporary shifts. That confidence feels different, and it stands out. He also sees you as different when you're able to express your needs clearly without attacking, assuming, or dramatizing. You speak from a place of truth, not fear. When you say what you feel in a soft, honest way, he gets the message that emotional honesty doesn't have to lead to conflict. That's new for many men. It disarms him. It makes him want to meet you there. Another thing that makes you unforgettable is your ability to give space without withdrawing your warmth. You don't punish him with silence or pull away to teach him a lesson. Instead, you stay open, but you also stay centered. You let him come back when he's ready, and he doesn't feel judged when he does. This blend of openness and boundaries is rare and magnetic. He also begins to see you as different when he notices you're not trying to mold him into the version of a man you want. You're connecting to who he is now, not who you hope he becomes. That acceptance creates a feeling of freedom, and freedom is one of the most powerful emotional connectors for men. In a world full of pressure, expectations, and emotional demand, you become the woman who makes him feel understood, safe, challenged in the right way, and genuinely appreciated. That's when he realizes you're not just another connection, you're the one that feels different. Triggering a man's emotional investment isn't about convincing him, proving your worth, or doing more for him. It's about activating the part of him that chooses you on his own, because being connected to you feels meaningful, grounding, and emotionally rewarding. Men invest when the connection feels good, not pressured. They invest when the relationship becomes a place where they feel like a better version of themselves, not a place where they feel expected to perform. One of the strongest ways to spark this emotional investment is by showing consistency in who you are, not what you give. When your mood doesn't swing based on his level of interest, when you're warm without being overgiving, and when you stay connected to your own life instead of revolving around his, he starts to see you as someone he can attach to in a healthy way. Your steadiness becomes magnetic. It makes him feel safe, leaning in. Another powerful trigger is allowing him to contribute to your life in small but meaningful ways. Men bond through doing, through helping, supporting, offering, showing up. When you let him step into that role without forcing it, he begins to feel emotionally invested because his actions matter. Something as simple as asking for his opinion or letting him help with a task sends the message, "You add value to my world." That feeling makes him want to stay. Holding boundaries also plays a major role. When you calmly express what you need and stand by it without drama, he sees that you take yourself seriously, and that makes him take you seriously. Boundaries show him you're not afraid to lose someone who isn't showing up fully. That confidence creates a subtle urgency in him, not out of fear, but out of respect. Most importantly, emotional investment grows when he can relax around you. When he feels he can be imperfect, confused, or vulnerable without disappointing you, he begins to attach, because suddenly you're not just someone he likes. You become the person he feels emotionally safe choosing. That's the moment emotional investment begins to take root and grow. Becoming unforgettable to a man doesn't come from grand gestures, giving more than you should, or trying to be perfect. What makes you unforgettable is the emotional imprint you leave on him, the feeling he gets when he's around you, and the sense of depth and authenticity he can't shake once he's experienced it. Men don't remember the woman who tries the hardest. They remember the woman who makes them feel something they can't find anywhere else. One of the most powerful ways to become unforgettable is by owning your presence. When you show up fully, confident, warm, emotionally aware, and unapologetically yourself, he feels a level of genuineness that stands out in a world filled with pretense and emotional guardrails. A woman who embraces who she is, without trying to impress, creates a lasting emotional echo. He feels seen, and at the same time, he sees you in a way that sticks with him. You also become unforgettable when you show intentional softness without losing your strength. Softness is not weakness. It's an emotional quality that invites connection. When you can express emotions honestly, laugh freely, admit when something touches you, or show a hint of vulnerability, he experiences a version of femininity that feels both inviting and real. Pair that with boundaries, the ability to say no, to walk away, to protect your peace, and you become a woman he deeply respects. Another element of unforgettable energy is knowing when to lean in and when to take a step back. You don't smother, you don't cling, you don't demand constant attention. Instead, you leave space for him to come toward you. That space creates intrigue, but it also creates clarity. He feels the difference between a woman who needs him and a woman who chooses him. And finally, you become unforgettable when you inspire him. Not by pushing him, but by being someone who lives with passion, purpose, and self-awareness. A woman who's connected to her life, her joy, and her growth becomes someone a man thinks about long after she leaves the room. Because she doesn't just add to his world, she expands it. And that is the kind of woman a man can't forget. The "she's the one" moment isn't something a man consciously plans. It's an emotional tipping point where everything inside him clicks, and he realizes that you're different from anyone else he's met. It's not about perfection or constant agreement. It's about the way you make him feel safe, understood, and inspired all at once. This moment usually happens quietly, almost imperceptibly, but its impact is profound and irreversible. What triggers this realization is the combination of emotional safety and magnetic attraction. A man reaches this point when he senses that he can show his true self without fear of judgment or rejection. He notices that his walls don't have to stay up around you. He can laugh, share his doubts, admit fears, and still feel valued. That security is rare, and when he experiences it with you, it starts to stand out against every other connection he's had. Another crucial factor is the balance you maintain between presence and independence. He sees a woman who is deeply connected to her life, her goals, and her joy, yet fully present with him. This balance communicates that your world doesn't revolve around him, but he's welcome in it. That combination of warmth, confidence, and grounded energy creates the feeling that he's found someone irreplaceable, someone who enhances his life rather than completing it. The she's the one moment is also marked by emotional resonance. He starts reflecting on how he feels when he's with you versus when he's not. The longing isn't about neediness, it's about the magnetic pull of connection and authenticity. He notices patterns, he wants to share more, be more, and show up more because being with you awakens a part of him he didn't know existed. Finally, this moment solidifies when he starts envisioning a future that includes you naturally, without pressure or force. It's the quiet certainty that choosing you feels effortless and right. At that point, he isn't just attracted to you, he's invested in the emotional and relational space you've created together. That is when the shift happens, and he begins to treat the connection with the seriousness, care, and devotion that marks true emotional commitment. As we wrap up, it's important to remember that transforming a connection with an emotionally unavailable man isn't about tricks, manipulation, or forcing a commitment. It's about understanding the emotional landscape he operates in and learning how to interact in ways that naturally draw him closer while maintaining your own emotional integrity. The shift doesn't happen overnight, but small, consistent changes in your energy, communication, and boundaries create profound results over time. One of the first action steps is to focus on yourself, your confidence, your passions, and your emotional stability. When you bring that grounded energy into the relationship, it's magnetic. You're no longer trying to fill gaps in him. Instead, you're inviting him into a space that already feels full, safe, and emotionally nourishing. That presence alone starts to shift his perspective and make him see you as someone worth investing in. Next, pay attention to how you communicate. Use words that invite openness rather than demand it. Show curiosity and appreciation for his honesty and vulnerability. Reinforce the behavior you want to see, not through pressure but through acknowledgement and genuine attention. This creates a feedback loop that encourages him to gradually lower his walls and engage more deeply. Another key step is to hold boundaries firmly. Know what you will and will not accept and maintain that stance without drama or emotional manipulation. Boundaries don't push him away. They demonstrate your self-respect and create a safe container where he can choose to meet you. When he experiences that balance of freedom and stability, he begins to invest emotionally in ways he may never have before. Finally, allow patience to guide you. Emotional availability develops over time, and your role isn't to hurry it. Instead, practice presence, consistency, and authenticity in every interaction. The combination of these strategies, self-possession, intentional communication, healthy boundaries, and patience, is what ultimately turns a tentative connection into a deeply committed bond. When applied consistently, these steps transform how he sees you, how he feels about you, and